I'm Jack Rogers and today is my 14th birthday, so had to make myself a birthday cake. Some of you are probably like, wow, that's really sad, he's making his own birthday cake. But I have a twin brother, so it's for him too. This cake is going to be layered with purple cake layers, and when you cut into it, it's going to explode with sprinkles, so let's get started. The first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to bake 6 pounds of purple vanilla cake. Except I meant to put 2.5, except after I put them in the oven, I realized that I messed that up. And so that is why it's such a little tiny cake. The recipe I'm going to use is in the link in the description box below, along with everything you need. I chose purple because I thought the outside of the cake is going to be black and white, so the purple and the black and white really go, and I've always loved dark purple, so it's my birthday, and my brother, I got his approval, so he said he wanted purple too. After you baked your cakes, the next step is you're going to need to level them. When I was taking them out of their pans, however, I realized that I don't know what happened with the baking. Something must have gone wrong, but I could not get them out of their pans. I'm like shaking it and shaking it and shaking it, and it's not coming out. So after 15 minutes of shaking the cake out of the pan, finally came out, and I took a serrated knife and chopped all the humps off the top, then cut the caramelization off the bottom, and then cut the caramelization off the side, because that gray color is really unappetizing, if I'm being honest. After I did all that, I cut the cake layers in half. I actually forgot to say that in the last video. I realized after I was editing. So I cut the cake layers in half, leaving me with 6 layers in total. Once all the cake layers were prepared, I took a 3-inch circle cutter. I had a lot of trouble because I was scared I'd make the circle too big and then it would all the sprinkles would push out. I don't know. That's just like a fear of mine when I was making this cake. But anyways, I took a 3-inch circle cutter and I cut each center out, and you're not supposed to cut the top one off, but I accidentally did because I got a little ambitious with it, and it's pretty fun to cut out circles. So if you make the same mistake as me and you completely cut that circle out, you can just place it back in when you're putting all the sprinkles inside. And once I cut the circles out of the cake, I was very worried about how large the cut was because I was scared it would pop open. And throughout the cake, I'm like making sure it's not like open in any spots. So I made sure it was chilled the entire time, so it was like frozen almost. After I cut the circles out, I placed those in the fridge for a bit, and instead of covering them in cling wrap, I actually took a giant copper bowl that is like about a 1.5 feet tall, and I just covered the cake layers and they were stacked, and so that acted as a seal. So if you don't want to take the time to wrap like 14 cake layers, then you can just do that. After I placed those in the fridge, I prepared 2.5 recipes of my Swiss meringue buttercream. After I prepared the buttercream, I began to layer the cake. And this was probably the most annoying layering I have ever done, because you have to layer around the circle, so like a donut, which is so annoying because instead of placing it in the center like I normally would, I have to place it around. And then when I do that, the buttercream like sometimes flings off and then crumbs get everywhere. This was a pain. But after I spread it on one, then I spread it in the inside because I don't want the sprinkles to be coated in icing. And then place the next cake layer, spread it, put like a mini crumb coat in the inside. And I'll get to a crumb coat in a few seconds if you're wondering what that is. After I finished layering, I just took my bag of sprinkles and I just poured away. This was actually so satisfying because you just see all the sprinkles pour in, and then once it reached the second layer right below the top, I placed the little cake on the top, so it was sealed. Now it is time to crumb coat the cake. A crumb coat is a thin coating around the cake that makes sure all the crumbs are locked in when you come back to ice it. I just placed a dollop of buttercream on the top, and I just started to spread it around the cake until all of it was coated, and then I took a bench scraper and I cleaned up the sides. Place that in the fridge for 5 to 20 minutes, however long your fridge takes. You can also place it in the freezer if you want. While the cake was chilling, I began to prepare for the final coat. A final coat is just the thicker layer you put around the cake. For this though, I use a piping bag because it ensures that I get everything on the sides, and it's a pretty efficient way to do it. So all I did was I just placed a bit of buttercream into the piping bag and cut a bit off the tip, and took the cake back out once it was chilled and began to pipe rings and rings and rings. This is actually pretty satisfying to me, piping the rings. And once it was all the way to the top, I put the leftover on the top of the cake and then spread that out so it was completely flat. After I smoothed the top, I grabbed my bench scraper once again and I began to smooth the sides. Any gaps that you have, just fill in with leftover buttercream. Gaps are just the little spaces that the buttercream did not quite get to. After spinning it a few times, your cake should be pretty smooth, and then you should place it back in the fridge. For this cake, you're gonna wanna make sure your cake is really, really chilled. I just ate dinner while it was chilling, and that was a pretty long time. And while it was chilling, I began to put all my sprinkles in a bowl, and then I put a tray out. The tray, I know what you're thinking, it looks disgusting. When we put it in the dishwasher, we realized it ripped a whole layer off of it. That's why it looks so like it's been through a war pretty much, but it's fine, it's clean, don't worry. I would never make a cake on something dirty. The tray just makes sure that when you're adding the sprinkles to the sides of the cake that it doesn't fly off the table, even though it still does and their sprinkles get everywhere. It just helps so it's more situated, I guess. Anyways, I took the cake back out, placed it on the tray, and I began to apply the sprinkles on the side. These sprinkles are from Fancy Sprinkles. I'll leave the link in the description down below. They have so many cool sprinkles, trust me, it makes you want to buy sprinkles even if you don't make cakes. Anyways, I just used my hand and pressed those on the side until it was completely done. And be careful not to get it on the top. The top is where you're putting your age that you're turning. Make sure that's really clear and then place that in the fridge while you prepare the stencil for your number. What you have to do to make the 14 a 14 is you have to cut out a stencil. So I used parchment paper because it's food safe, unlike other things that you could use. But at first I was using pencil, except I could not get the numbers even, and I ended up taking I think 20 minutes just trying to draw out letters, and I was like, why don't I just print this out? So I chose a cool font. I'll forget the font. So I just wrote 14 on a Google Doc, and I just did a really cool font. I completely forgot what the font was. I'll leave it in the description, or actually I'll put it on the screen. I did not cut that out because paper on cake is not The good thing about parchment paper is it's see-through, so I just traced that over it, and then I folded it so I could cut each number out, and then I cut like a circle-ish just so it would fit on the top of the cake, except it didn't. It was a little too short, and that's why some sprinkles got on the edge, but I'll show you how to get those off. I took the cake back out and I placed it on. Make sure it's center. I was very scared that it wouldn't be center and then the 14 would be a little off to the side, but just make sure it's centered, and then I just poured sanding sugar. I literally did what you would do with glitter, and then when you put the glue and then the glitter and then you dump it off. I did that, which is super dumb because you can't really tip a cake over. What you want to do though is you want to pour a bit of sprinkles that's just enough, and then rub whatever is left off. Not like me where I shoot all of them off super quickly so they didn't get onto the cake, and some of them still did. For the parts that were open, because the stencil was too little, I just cut more pieces of parchment paper and then slid them under. Once I completely covered the 14, I made sure it was fully covered, and then I slowly pulled, and then I took it off like a Band-Aid. And they still got on it. And this was annoying because I was oh, maybe I'll use my cake tweezers, and except I couldn't find those. And then I was oh, maybe I'll use a toothpick, and then I couldn't find that. So then I just used, I don't really know what this tool is called, but it was a flat tool. It was kind of sharp at the end, and I just used that to scoop all the sprinkles out. And then I patched the buttercream that was dented from the tool. Finally, I put more buttercream in a piping bag and then piped little dots with a round piping tip around the edge. You don't want to do something too high or else you won't be able to see that nice 14, which is the main point. And now the best part is cutting into the cake. All the sprinkles just shoot out, and it's probably one of the coolest things I've ever done. Thank you so much for watching me make this cake today. I really enjoyed how it turned out, and I can't wait for another year in cake as a 14-year-old. And it may be sad that I'm 14 just because on Instagram I now have to change my bio to 13 to 14. And for some reason to me 14 sounds a lot older. But anyways, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment what cake you think I should make next, and don't forget all the links are in the description box below, including a full description with all the materials, instructions, and ingredients you need to make this cake. Thank you so much for watching.